Pronouns, pronouns everywhere. It would be impossible to stress this too much. If you do not master the pronoun, you will be lost in the woods, which is a scary place to be. It will give you indigestion, and no one wants that. Pronouns are those little words that stand in for nouns. Now, most people know this. Like, for example, if I say to you, Julie is my wife. Julie is beautiful. Julie is a good cook, because Julie grew up in an Italian family where Julie learned to cook well. You get tired at some point of saying Julie, and you replace Julie with she, right? She grew up in an Italian home where she learned to cook well. Okay, so pronouns save people time. Now, I could also say that this way. They save us time. Do you see in that sentence how they replace the word pronouns and us replace the word people? Okay, simple enough, right? But tell me why this is wrong. Pronouns save people time. Them save we time. Them save we time. Sounds crazy to us, doesn't it? But why does that sound wrong? Because we have the case all mixed up. And even if we don't understand the grammar of that in English, it automatically sounds wrong to us, because them is not used for the subject. They is used for the subject. And we is not used for the object. Us is used for the object. You've never thought about it before, many of you, but don't you see, this is one of the benefits of learning Greek. You'll learn to understand what is happening in many cases subconsciously in your mind, but also, frankly, a lot of people mess pronouns up when they speak. They'll use the subjective when they should be using the objective, or the objective when they get it all mixed up. And a lot of people, it goes unnoticed, but anybody who understands grammar will hear that and go, those people really don't know the language very well. And you don't want to sound like a hick, right? So we got to learn the pronouns, and we got to learn the grammar of the pronouns. But pronouns do more than just stand in for nouns. Pronouns come in many flavors, many wonderful flavors. There are several different kinds of pronouns. So, for example, we have our personal pronoun, which most people know. Julie is my wife. She is beautiful. Okay. We have our relative pronouns, which relate one thing to another, one idea to another. We have our interrogative pronouns. Who is understanding this? We have our indefinite pronouns. Someone is lost. I'm sure of it. We have our demonstrative pronouns. This should be clear. And we have our reflexive pronouns. I myself am trying my hardest to make you understand. Today we start with the most basic of the pronouns, the most common of the pronouns, the personal pronoun. The personal pronoun stands in for persons, places, and things. So, for example, Julie is a good cook. She makes great food. Okay, but to get into the personal pronoun, we must understand the concept of first person, second person, and third person. Now, most of you probably already know this, but first person just has to do with me, right? It's I, me, myself, and I. First person, just one of me here. Second person adds a person. You are dressed very oddly. Why, thank you. You really should let your wife help you pick out your clothes. You're not so hot yourself. Get it? Second person, I talk to you. There are two of us. Or, I talk to you, and I talk to you. But what if you and I are talking about him? You see, we have three people now. There's you, there is me, and there is him. Third person, you and I and him. So third person adds a third person to the mix. And of course that person could be a he, it could be a she, or it could be an it. That's third person. Then of course we have our plural forms. So I is singular, but if I want to make first person plural, I say we. We are talking to you right now. A little scary, isn't it? Okay. And then of course there is a plural form of you. I could be talking to you individually, or I might mean you as a group, collectively, you plural. Now notice there's no different form in English for you plural, unless of course you live in the South, in which case you say y'all, right? Which means you all, meaning you plural. Okay, but in proper grammar we don't have a plural form of you. And then in the third person, I speak of him or her or it. but in the plural, I speak of them, right? So we have our plural forms. Is this getting confusing? Let's take a look at a chart. And frankly, English is a little inconsistent and confusing, but let's see what's going on here. The reason it seems confusing is because it is confusing. But the problem is not with Greek. The problem is with English. Just take a look at this chart. Let me point out 3 oddities. To begin with, there is no clear pattern that these pronouns follow as there is in Greek. We've seen this beautiful 2-1-2 pattern that the article and so many other forms of speech follow in Greek. But in English, most of our nouns and pronouns don't decline. But when they do it in ways that are not predictable. So we have no obvious pattern in English. That's one of our problems. The second problem is there's no real clear pattern as to why English does what it does. So for example, in the first person, we have a subjective form. We would call it nominative in Greek, I, and then the object is me, and then we have a possessive form, mine. And then we have plural forms of this. It becomes we in the plural and us for the object and our for the possessive. In the dative, of course, we just use our keywords in English because there really is no dative form of the pronoun in English. Okay, well, that's the first person. But now look at the second person. There's no plural form, and the pronoun declines almost none. There's no accusative form, what we would call the objective form. There is a possessive form, your, but there's no singular and plural. They don't change between the singular and plural in English, unless, of course, you happen to be from the South, in which case for the plural you say y'all, right? But for most people, English second-person pronouns don't change. First persons do. And then when we get to the third, well, let's look at the third problem. Notice that most English pronouns do not have gender. If I say I, you don't know if I am a male or a female or an it, right? If I talk about you, I don't know if I'm talking about you singular or plural. I don't know if you are a male or a female or a neuter. I don't know anything about your gender. But for some odd reason, when we get to the third person singular, suddenly in English, we have gender. So we have 3 forms of the subject here, he, she, and it. And 3 forms of the possessive, his, hers, and its, and 3 forms of the object here, him, her, or it. And you can see it doesn't change. She becomes her, he becomes him. But now flip over to the plural and notice that we're back to no gender. Okay, so I'm griping. I'm griping not about Greek, but about English. And I'm trying to make the point to you that the problem with Greek is English, okay? Pronouns are tough for English speakers, not because of Greek, but because of English. Greek is perfectly regular. So really, in a way, the challenge in this lesson is to learn English, not Greek. Now take a look at the Greek first and second person personal pronouns. Okay, now we will look at the third in the next lesson, but for now, let's just look at first and second person. Remember, first is I and second is you, and all of the various forms. Okay, so let's look at the Greek here, and I want you to notice right off the bat, there's something missing. Remember, we're used to every Greek substantive having what 3 things? Case, number, and gender. What's missing? Well, we have our case, right? We have our number, but where's our gender? There is no gender, okay? And that's the first thing you need to know. First and second person pronouns in Greek do not have gender. Okay, so the bad thing is that they won't be as specific, but the good thing is that there are fewer forms. In fact, only 8 forms of the first person pronoun, only 8 forms of the second person, because we only have, well, 1 genderless form. Okay, so no gender. The second thing I want you to notice is that these follow a declension that's a little odd to us. These don't look quite as nice as, for example, the article or some other things that we've seen, adjectives that follow a nice 2-1-2 or 3-1-3. These actually follow a kind of modified, weird third declension pattern, okay? And obviously, it's sort of mangled together, okay? So after I've told you that English is so irregular and annoying, well, Greek is a little odd too when it comes to the pronouns, but not nearly so odd as English. So anyway, just look at these. Ego In fact, say them after me. I think that would be good practice. Ego, mu, moi, me. Hemes, hemon, hemin, hemas. And then in the second person, su, su, sounds the same, doesn't it? But you can see it's spelled differently. So su, su, soy, se. Humes, humon, humin, humas. Okay, well, some of this looks familiar, right? That looks genitive, the omicron upsilon. The iota looks dative to us. Remember on the end there, sort of third declension-y, right? And it's sort of nice to me that me, it looks like me. So that's sort of like the English form of the objective or accusative case. This is a third declension. We've seen this in some odd third declensions. This is regular, the omega noon for our genitive plurals, so that doesn't throw us. Humin is a little strange there for the dative plural. And we've seen this os ending in the third declension as normal. So it's not completely unrecognizable. I mean, there are lots of similarities with the noun endings we have seen. But there are some oddities, and I think it's just best to just memorize these. These are so important because you will see them everywhere. You just absolutely have to recognize these. Now look at another nice similarity here between the first and second person pronouns. Can you see that if you memorize one, you almost have the other one, except for some very slight changes? Obviously, the nominative singular is a little weird, and we're used to that, right? But ego in the first person and su second person. Okay, so those are kind of different, but from there on down, look that the difference between the first and second person is just one letter. So mu means like mine, and su means like yours, okay? And moi means to me, and soy means to you. So the only difference in the singular is just mu becomes sigma. Mu su, moi soy, me se, okay? And then in the plural, it's super easy because we just have either an eta or an upsilon. Hemes, hemon, hemin, hemas, or humes, humon, humin, humas. I like the upsilon because you sort of seems like you, so that's easy to remember. Humes means y'all, right? You plural, or humas in English would be y'all as well. Humon, your. So the difference between first and second person is very slight. Just need to learn to recognize the little changes. And then one last thing to say about these fellows here is these little small versions, which I'm sure you were wondering, what are those? These are emphatic forms. So if I say mu, it just means my. If I say mu, it means my, okay? Emphatic, or moi is stronger than moi. Me is stronger than me. Same thing here. Su with the accent is stronger than su without it. Soy with the accent is stronger than soy without the accent. Se with the accent, stronger than se without the accent. So those are just emphatic forms. Now, what I think will really help this make sense to you is to look at some examples in John 1. Grab your Greek master chart, and I think for a little while you'll need this, okay? Because when you come across a pronoun, you'll probably have to look and get the translation. But hopefully you'll begin to recognize these so that you won't need your master chart. Your master chart will be your brain. Really, that's what we're trying to do, is to turn your brain into a master chart. A little scary, maybe. We don't come to any first and second person pronouns in John 1 until we get to verse 15, which is a little odd. Normally you'll run into them more than this. But in verse 15, here we have mu, which we recognize as my, okay? But why do we translate it me here? Can anyone figure that one out? Remember the stupid prepositions. Oh, prepositions. Remember that when you have a preposition, that the case of its object will be connected with that preposition. So opiso takes the genitive. And so we don't translate the word using our keyword or using like of me or my here because of the preposition. after me. Opiso takes the genitive. Same thing going on here. Before me. Imprasthon takes the genitive. Now those are both, opiso and imprasthon are not very common prepositions. So you might have to look them up, but they take the genitive. That's why we have this case here. Here we have protas, which is actually an adverb, and the mu here is translated of me, ahead of me. Okay? Sliding down to verse 16, here we have a form, hemes. Can you find hemes down here? First person, plural. We, okay? So look at this sentence. Hati ek tu pleiromatos autou, out of his fullness, hemes pantes elabamen. We all received. So here hemes is acting like the subject. That's why it's nominative. It's plural. We, first person. Moving down to verse 19, we have su. Do you recognize that capital sigma there? If you're wondering why they capitalize this, it's sort of like in English. When you quote somebody or when you start a quotation, you start the quotation with a capital letter. So that's what's going on there. But so su, who are you? Su. Well, where is Su? You, right? So you, who are you? Or to smooth that out in English, who are you? Okay, but in English we wouldn't say you, who are you? It's emphatic here. Actually, the Greek is bringing the you to the front. Who are you? Who do you think you are? Almost that implication with this nuance. See how cool it is that just by moving words around, Greek is able to convey more than English can. Su, tis a. You, who are you? Okay, and then here we have a form here that should be, like nice and common for us. Ego, right? Ego uk emi ha Christos. I, not I am the Christ. Ego. So here we go. Ego, I. So this is our first person singular nominative form of the pronoun. Here is some nice morphing around in 26 and 27 here. Notice here the subject here, I baptize. Ego. So I. And can you find humon? Do you recognize the on ending? Genitive plural there, right? So humon. In the midst of you all, technically, right? Because it's plural, but we have no plural form in English unless we go southern. In y'all's midst. Mesos humon, in the midst of you. Hestiken han humes, whom you not know. So humes here, what form? We have our nominative plural. You all don't know. And here we have again a preposition followed by the genitive, which is why we don't use the keyword and we don't translate this mine. After me. After me, the one after me coming. Verse 33 has some really nice examples here because we see three forms of the first person singular pronoun here. So here we have one that's sort of hidden. Remember, we saw that this word is actually kai and ego. It's not typing in Greek for me here, but you get the idea, right? Okay. But these are put together, kago. It's kai ego. But here we have ego. I, okay? I didn't know him, but the one who sent me, me, see our accusative form? See how this is the me here, the me is receiving the action of the verb. The one who sent me, so that's me, to baptize in water. That one said to me, moi, recognize the dative there, so that's the dative form. He said to me, indirect object. One last thing I'll show you, and this is not so much about pronouns as it is about verbs. But you might be a little confused here where it says, I told you, because you would expect the you here to be not in the dative case, I told to you. You would expect it to be accusative. I told you, right? You receiving the action of the telling. And in fact, when you go down here, I saw you, that's exactly what you have. Accusative case, that's what you would expect, receiving the action of the verb. So why is this in the dative? Well, here's the answer. Certain verbs, and this is one of them, to say, receive, or they take their object in the dative case. And there are certain verbs that will sort of like
always want the dative, and this happens to be one of them. So the reason this is dative is nothing weird about pronouns. It's something weird about verbs. So we'll have a chance to look at that more later. Just one more example of that. You would expect this to say, Akaluthe me, follow me, because me kind of goes with, right, me. So that's what we would expect. But akalutheo, this verb, is another one that takes its object in the dative. So I'm just pointing this out in case you're a little puzzled by why that's dative. The implication, I think, in Greek is follow after me, follow behind me. It's more of a dative idea. But in any case, there are certain verbs that take their object in the dative. So, okay, that's what's going on there.
Do you get it? Do you get it? I get it. Do you? I get it. I get it. We all get it. And if you don't get it yet, don't worry, because we have several lessons to conquer the pronoun. It's such an important part of speech. Go on and do the reading and the grammar, do the exercises, and don't despair. We will conquer this important piece of grammar.